We turned on? Alright. Open up with Job. Good evening. It's really great to be here with everybody tonight. It's not technically supposed to be me up here. Somebody ended up getting double booked. And so I mentioned to Dad in the past that I had one or two sermons that I worked up, at least I had heard, so he decided I should pick up on that. I was mainly trying to be nice, but here we are. So you're stuck with me tonight, but always thankful for an opportunity to be able to present lessons of God's Word. Book of Job. I've really grown to appreciate the books, especially of the Old Testament, that we can still apply to our lives today. Even though they were written 2,000 plus years ago, so long ago, we can still take them and apply them to our lives, take lessons from them, and try to serve God in a better way that we have in our past. When I say Job, what's your mind go to? Automatically, what do you start thinking of when I say Job? Now, most people will probably start thinking of suffering, right? Suffering, all terrible things happen to them, the loss of all possession, his family, but it's terrible things happening to them. And yes, we're going to talk about that, but I want to take it one step further. When we think of Job, these terrible things happening. Bad things happen in our lives. That's just life, that's part of it. But we have options, good choices when these bad things happen. Option one is, this terrible thing's happening to you, you can act like you were, right? The old Winnie the Pooh movie. Oh, woe is me, just sit there, you're upset, but it's terrible things happening to you, you pout, you blame others, maybe you even blame God if it's terrible things happening to you. Or, you can go with option two. Yes, these bad things happen, but we look at God. Have a good attitude about things. Look to Him, ask Him for help, pray to Him, He's going to take care of us. When bad things happen in our life, look to God. Our attitude. Lessons to Job, story of Job, we're going to look at an overview of the book, take a few examples, lessons, how we can take these things, work on our attitude a little bit during our lives. Overview of the book of Job. Part of the wisdom literature, part of the Bible, wisdom literature. It's really hard for me. What type of books like this is really hard for me. I'm not an English person. I don't understand the English language very well. I'm more of a numbers guy. And so English poetry versus Hebrew poetry. English poetry, I'm going to make it very, very simple. It's like sound, right? Rhyme. Dr. Seuss, perfect example. English poetry, hop on pop, cat and cat, things like that. That's English poetry. Hebrew poetry is a little different. It goes off of the thought. Cadence of sound versus cadence of thought. So a thought, this idea intensifies and gets deeper and deeper and repeats itself over and over again. Job is part of this wisdom literature section of the Bible. Job is also one of those weird books that is possibly written in a time that it didn't happen. So as we see, you have Job, Psalm, Proverbs, it's in that part of the Bible, but it's much debated when it actually happened. I'm going to claim what happened earlier. So if you actually look at the story itself, the original language, it's written, the middle part of the book, the main chunk of the book is written during the time of Solomon, David Solomon time frame. But if you look at the examples of the story, like I said, his age, he had all these things happen to him, all his possessions were taken away. We know the story of Job, we'll go over here in a little bit, but at the end of it, it says his blessings were doubled because of the way he lived his life in service to God, and he lived 140 more years. That lines up more with the patriarch time frame because we see the longer age gap. And we also see that, we'll talk about in chapter 1, he offers sacrifices. We know after the law of Moses instituted that the people weren't to offer their own sacrifices, they're supposed to take them to priests. Where Job goes and offers sacrifices for his family, and we'll look at a little bit. We don't know exactly when it was written, but we can take clues like that and kind of get an idea of when we think it was written. So again, we're going to take a very, very high overview of the book instead of getting into the details. Every time I preach this one, Bella makes me laugh. So I'm going to break that up into 2 or 3 sermons because Job is just such a deep book that you can go into so many different things from the book of Job. Summary of the actual book itself, the story of Job. Starting off, he lived in us. We see in chapter 1 and verse 3 that it was somewhere in the east because it says he was the man and greatest of all the east. Somewhere near a desert, in verse 19, we see that when his kids were taken away, the wind came to a great desert across the desert. The man of remarkable character. It says multiple times throughout here that he was blameless, upright, he feared God, shunned evil. Chapter 1, verse 8, and the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? There is none like him on earth, a blameless and upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil. To have anybody say that would be a great thing. To have anybody say that about you, but to have God, of all people, the creator of the universe, to say, have you considered Job? Have you considered this man who's on earth? He's blameless, he's upright, he looks to me. He was greatly blessed. We'll get there in a second. I've got it ordered. He was a spiritual leader of his family. Spiritual leader of his family. Everyone look at verse 5. Chapter 1, verse 5. So it was when the days of feasting had run their course, that Job would send and sanctify them. He would rise early in the morning and offer burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, it may be that my sons have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. So Job did this regularly. He was a spiritual leader of his family. I like to call these maybe just in case sacrifices. He did it because he doesn't know what happened at these feasts, these parties that his family was having. They normally hosted these events, but these feasts held at son's house. He doesn't know what happened, so he regularly offered these sacrifices because they might have done these things. Spiritual leader of his family. He was greatly blessed. Greatly blessed. Verse 3 says, also his possessions were 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 female donkeys. A very large household, so he was the greatest of all of the people of the east. He had 7 sons, 3 daughters, 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, meaning 1,000 oxen because a yoke is 2, and 500 female donkeys. This would be someone in maybe today's terms comparable to Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, someone who just has so much money, so many great material blessings, they really don't know what to do with them. Continuing on the story. That's the background of Job. Satan, in chapter 1, appears before God. It says that he had been going to and from on the earth. That's just a side note that it's something that we need to remember. 1 Peter 5, verse 8. Be sober and vigilant. For the roaring lion is out to get us, right? Satan's always out to get that. Even from back then, Satan was always looking to be able to get us somehow. Satan appears before God. God asks him, he says, hey, have you thought about Job? Have you thought about Timothy, my servant Job? Chapter 1, verse 9. Chapter 1, verse 9. So Satan answered the Lord and said, does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not made a hedge around his household, and around all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands and his possessions, and have increased the land. But now, stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. And the Lord said to Satan, behold, all that he has is in your power, only do not lay a hand on his person. So Satan went out and cursed the Lord. Satan comes to God and says, well, of course these bad things, he's not going to curse you because nothing bad's happening to him. He has all his blessings in his life. Satan goes on, he attacks Job, he attacks his possessions. His losses in one day, if we read on, it says his oxen and his donkeys and their servants were lost to Sabean raiders. His sheep and their servants were lost to a fire from God from heaven. His camel and their servants were lost to Chaldean raiders. And then we see that his sons and his daughters were killed in a tornado or a great wind that came across the desert. Some of us in our lives, we've lost things, right? Whether it's your house to a fire, to a flood, to maybe a tornado if you live around here, to maybe our cars, right? Our cars were stolen, broken into, we got into a car crash, flood, a lot of different ways you can lose different things. Maybe you lose a business. If you're a business owner, maybe your business goes under, or you have to start over, or maybe you get laid off from your job, and just these terrible things happen in the economy. Sometimes we even lose loved ones. September 20th, 2023 is one day that I promise I'll never forget, and a bunch of people in this room probably will never forget either. One of the scariest things happened in my life. One of my best friends in the world was in the ICU. Job lost all 10 of his children. Drop of a hat. Drop of a hat, Job lost everything that he had. Back to back to back, his camels, his oxen, his possessions, his servants, his household, all 10 of his children. The fact that he can lose all of those things, and then as we continue on in the story, we see he doesn't curse God. He mourns, but he doesn't curse God. Amazing. Amazing. Great man that we can have an example to follow in our lives. Satan comes back before God. Doesn't happen, right? Doesn't work, doesn't do these things. He doesn't curse God. So Satan comes back before him again. Comes back and he talks to God again, and he says in chapter 2, we'll read verses 3 through 6. 2, 3 through 6. Then the Lord said to Satan,
Have you considered my servant Job? And there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil. And he holds fast to his integrity, although you incited me against him to destroy him without cause. So Satan answered the Lord and said, Skin for skin, yes, all that a man has he will give for his life. But stretch out your hand now and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will surely curse you to your face. And the Lord said to Satan, Behold, he is in your hands, but spare his life. Satan, kind of comes with an excuse right here, right? Yeah, my plan didn't work, but it didn't work because I only got to attack his possessions. If I can attack everything he has, his life, his body, if I can attack that, then why would he not curse you and die? Of course it's going to work. God says, go for it. Do your best, go for it, but spare his life. Don't kill him. Do what you want to do. Attack his body. Don't kill him. So he does. He goes out and he attacks Job physically. He has this terrible disease. It's possibly maybe a leprosy or a leukemia of the skin. We're not exactly told what it is, but we're told characteristics of it. Chapter 2, verse 7, it says there's boils. Verse 8, itching. In verse 12 of chapter 2, it says he had a drastic change of appearance. His friends didn't even recognize who he was after he had this disease. Chapter 7, there was worms and running sores. 7 verse 5 says, My flesh is caked with worms and dust. My skin is cracked and breaks out afresh. Corroding bones and gnawing pain in verse 30. In chapter 30, verse 17. My bones are pierced in me at night. My gnawing pains take no rest. Verse 30 of chapter 30. My skin grows black and falls from me, and my bones burn with fever. And this isn't something that he got and just got over in a couple of days. When we get the common cold, we're sick for a few days, but we have medicine to get over it. He had these things possibly for months. Chapter 7 and verse 3. So I have been allotted months of futility, and wearisome nights have been appointed to me. 29 verse 2. Oh, that I were in past months as the days when God watched over me. Terrible things happening to him, and they don't just last one night. They're just over occurring months and months of pain. Going on with the story, we see that Job loses his wife. His wife loses her faith. We'll come back to this one in a second. His friends come up, they kick him while he's down, and then this is where we see most of the book happen. Pretty much from chapters 3 through 37 is Job's friends section. This is part of the book that I would love to get into, but we're not going to tonight because I don't want to keep you more than 30 to an hour anyways. So his friends come, and then God talks at the very end of the book. God talks to Job and his friends and the way they live their lives, and he restored them, and then he restored Job with all of his blessings. Very fast, very high overview of the book of Job. Now we're going to take some examples, a couple examples from the story back in the first 2 chapters. We're going to take some examples, we're going to look at them, dive into them a little bit deeper. First one, we're going to look at his reaction, his attitude to the loss of his possessions. Go back to chapter 1, and we're going to start in verse 20. Chapter 1, starting in verse 20. Then Job arose, tore his robe, and shaved his head, and he fell to the ground and worshipped, and said, Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I shall return there. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In all of this, Job did not sin, nor charge God with wrong. All of these things happened. All these terrible things happened to him. He lost everything that he had. His entire livelihood, his life, his children, everything he had, gone. Gone. Drop of a hat, gone. He mourns. This is enough to truly break a man. And we see he mourns. Tears his robe, shaves his head, falls to the ground. But in chapter 1, verse 21, we see, yes, when he falls to the ground, into verse 20, he fell to the ground and worshipped. 21, he says, Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I shall return there. The Lord gave away, the Lord's taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And all he did no wrong. He knew that, yes, God gave these things, but God can take them away. I came into this world with nothing. I came from my mother with nothing, no clothes. I couldn't live in this world without help. I couldn't have these blessings without help. He knows that God did everything for him. So he says, the Lord gave, the Lord took away. I had all of these things because of God, and God has obviously decided to take them away from me. Why should I question that? Whatever God has in mind, let that happen. Lord gave, Lord taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Do we react that way in our lives? When these terrible things happen to us, when we lose the things that we like, right? We lose our car, we lose our possessions. We aren't given those things because we deserve them. God blesses us in this life even though we don't deserve it. So when these things are taken away from us, do we have this kind of mindset? In grief, he still praises God. Even though he considers God as the one who did all of these things, he still blesses God. He blesses the name of the Lord, and he doesn't charge God with wrong. This is the kind of attitude we have to have. When bad things happen to us in life, praise God. When good things happen to us in life, praise God. Everything that we do in our lives, look to God, and our lives will be on the right path. Next, Job's reaction to his physical and emotional pain. Chapter 2, verse 7. We'll start there. Chapter 2, verse 7. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord, struck Job with painful boils, from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. And he took for himself a potsherd with which to scrape himself while he sat in the midst of the ashes. Then his wife said to him, "Do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die." But he said to her, "You speak as one of the foolish women speaks. Shall we indeed accept good from God, and shall we not accept adversity?" In all of this, Job did not sin with his lips. Physical pain, verses 7 and 8. We talked about boils already. We see in verse 7 that he had these boils, this itching in verse 8. Imagine the pain he had, that if the only relief he can get is taking a broken piece of pottery and scraping his body. I don't know about y'all, if y'all seen a broken piece of pottery, it's not very smooth or soft, right? Imagine taking a knife or taking something with a very sharp edge. The only amount of relief he can get from this pain is scraping his arms, scraping his legs. That's the relief. The amount of pain that he had to deal with, and he still didn't curse God and die. I'm more of a teddy bear kind of guy, if you know me. My parents didn't really beat me when I was growing up. They learned to, get in my head and, guilt trip me, and that's how you get to me. I can take a beating, but when my mama tells me she's disappointed, then that's how you really get to me. So I'm more toned to the emotional side of pain. Job has just lost everything, right? He just lost everything: his possessions, his household, his livelihood, how he made a living, how he was blessed. Verses 15 through 18 of chapter 1. It wasn't like he had time to process these things. Starting in verse 15, it says, "When the Sabaean raiders killed them, took them away, indeed they have killed the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you." Starting in verse 16, "While he was still speaking, another came and said, 'The fire of God from heaven came and burned up the sheep and the servants, consumed them. I alone have escaped to tell you.' Chapter 17, "While he was still speaking, another also came and said, 'The Chaldeans formed 3 banded raids. The camels, they took them away. Yes, and killed the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you.' Verse 18, "While he was still speaking, another came and said, 'Your sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in the oldest brother's house, and suddenly a great wind came from the wilderness and struck the 4 corners of the house, fell on the young people. They're dead. I alone, I've escaped to tell you.'" Back to back to back, that's a lot of change, right? A lot of change really fast. A lot of people don't deal well with change, and I'm in that camp. I don't necessarily like change all that much. And these huge changes, he doesn't have time to deal with them. It's all at once. That's enough to truly break a man, make him lose his mind, because everything he had, gone. Besides God, in his everyday life, Job had lost everything. Everything he had, everything he was used to, gone. Except one thing. He still had his wife. Chapter 2, we're going to read verses 9 and 10 again. Chapter 2, verses 9 and 10. After he had these painful attack on his body, he lost all his possessions, this painful attack on his body, starting in verse 9. Then his wife said to him, "Do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die." But he said to her, "You speak as one of the foolish women speaks. Shall we not indeed accept good from God, and shall we not accept adversity as well?" In all of this, Job did not sin with his lips. Verse 9, his wife comes up to him, the person who he loves more than anybody, the person who gave him his children, who he spends his life with. He sees her every day. This person who he's supposed to trust more than anybody in the world comes up to him and says, "Curse God and die." Do you not see what's happening in this world? Do you not see everything we've lost? We had all of these things and now it's gone. Why are you still praising God? We've lost all of these things. Curse him and die. Why do you still have your integrity? Go against God. He's obviously not with us anymore. Job looks at her and says, you're speaking as one of the foolish women. Why should we take the good from God and not accept the bad as well? If we just took the good from God and not the bad, then we wouldn't have a relationship with him. I can't imagine what Job faced when it came to this part of the story. His companion, his life partner, the person he's supposed to trust more than anybody in the world, love more than anybody in the world, went against their beliefs. The person who Job offers sacrifices to God, does all of these things, praises God. His wife comes to him and says, why are you doing those things? Hey, we just lost everything, all our possessions, all our family. Why are you still serving God? He doesn't care about us anymore. Satan can attack us from a lot of different angles in our lives. And sadly, it's one of the ones that work more than any others is the people in our lives. Whether it's, our spouse or our children or our friends, co-workers, anybody we're close to, anybody we choose to have in our lives, Satan can use them to attack us. So many great, strong Christians are tempted, pulled away from serving God the right way because of the people they choose to surround themselves with. Putting God first in our hearts, it's imperative. We have to do it. We have to have a special love for God that no matter what happens, we can put him first. Heard a really good lesson this morning on the high cost of discipleship, right? Matthew chapter 10, 34 through 39 talked about Jesus didn't come to bring peace but a sword. No matter who it is in our lives, no matter what relationship, what thing it is in our lives, God has to come first. That's part of the cost of discipleship. That's part of the cost of serving God. When you serve God the right way, he's number one, period. Number one in everything that we do. Do we have that kind of love for God? Do we have God in that spot in our hearts that when the bad times hit, when our companion, our best friend in the world, whoever it is, if they come up to us and they say, hey, I want to do this thing. I want to live my life wrong. I want to go out. I want to do this thing that's just terrible, not serving God the right way. Do we have the kind of love for God, him high enough in our lives that we would stand up and tell him no? We should. We have to. We're told to. It's a hard thing to do, to go against someone we love, someone we care about. But if they continue to come between us and God, our relationship, make us miss church, make us live our lives the wrong way, fill in the blank. If they continue to help us go against God down that path, that's not the kind of person we need to be around, and we need to have God at a higher place than them in our hearts. The husband and wife relationship. This is a side note that I want to go down this a little bit. Husband and wife relationship is a very beautiful thing when it's treated the right way. When it's treated the right way, the husband and wife relationship is supposed to be the most special relationship humans can have with each other, aside from our relationship with God. We tend to put all of the blame on Job's wife in this situation. And yes, while she is the one at fault, let's take a step back and think about it from her perspective too. She's also just lost everything that she had. We put all of the blame on her, but she kind of is going through the same thing. Everything that she had in this life is gone. She lost her children, she lost her possessions, and she's having to watch her husband go through all of this. And in her mind, watching her husband go through all of this and not getting upset, not cursing God, it's kind of making her go crazy too. People deal with grieving in different ways. Job, when he was grieving, he looked to God. And that's what we're supposed to do. In our lives, if bad things happen, good things happen, no matter what, we look to God. Grief is a very powerful emotion that a lot of different people deal with a lot of different ways, and we may not understand one person grieving versus another person grieving. Job's wife chose to deal with her grief in a way by going against God and cursing him. We don't know how Job and his wife talked to each other besides this one instance. I'm not sure in the rest of the book of Job. I don't think she's mentioned at all in the rest of the book of Job. We see at the end that God blessed him with more daughters and sons, and so maybe she comes back into the picture. We're not exactly sure what happens in the story, but this is the one scenario that we see the husband and wife talking in the story. Do they talk to each other in a good way? Yes, grief is in the picture, but even when we're upset, we can still talk to each other calmly, right? We don't have to get upset. We don't have to yell. We can still have a real adult conversation, a very good, constructive conversation without yelling. There's no reason for yelling, no reason for getting upset. Even when we're upset and mad about things in our relationship and our lives, whether it's our spouse, whether it's a coworker, whoever it is, whoever you're talking to, there's no reason to get upset. Maybe if they didn't get upset and they talked not in a very angry way, then they didn't have to have this kind of situation. Even after all of this, losing literally everything he had, his family, his children, his possessions, his livelihood, his servants, everything, now his wife. End of verse 10 in chapter 2. It says, in all of this, Job did not sin with his lips. After all of this, all these terrible things piling on top of him, back to back, awful things, Job still didn't go against God. Job still looked at him and everything he did. He didn't sin with his lips. That's the kind of attitude we have to have. That's the kind of person we need to be. When these bad things happen, look to God. Don't just look to Him when it's in terrible things, when we're struggling along in our lives and need help and need somebody to talk to. Look to Him in the good times. If good things are happening, thank Him, bless Him, have a relationship. You don't have a relationship with somebody in our lives when only bad things happen. You talk to them about the good, you talk to them about the bad. God's the same way. God's the same way. We have to trust in God, trust in the fact that He knows best. Pray to Him. Let Him guide our lives, not let us make our own human decisions. Those are the two main things that I want to talk about. Promise we're almost done. Job was a massive book that we could dive into literally so many different things. But those are the two main ideas we're going to think about this morning. Or this evening, sorry. A few more thoughts and I promise the lesson's yours. Bear with me a couple more minutes. First one. We don't always know what God has planned. We can't always see things how they need to happen. Chain of events, right? We don't always know exactly if this one event's happening. Yes, it might look really bad on the surface, but we don't know what God knows, right? We try to apply human logic and see things happening in this way, but if this thing happens over here, then maybe it's making something else happen over here. Only God knows that, we don't. Sometimes for someone to correct their ways and come back to God, then maybe something bad has to happen in someone's life. I've seen it, before where, sadly, this couple who raised their children the right way, they had a child to go astray, and when they're grown, they make their own decisions, and this child chose to go against God, live their life their own way. Couple still pushes on, couple serves God, loves them, and terrible accident happens. Terrible accident happens, and this couple, whether they die in a car crash, whatever it is, terrible thing happens to this couple. Well, that child who was living their life the wrong way, choosing to do these things incorrectly, choosing to go against God, this bad situation brought them back to God. They realized that, actions have consequences. You never know when your last day is going to be, and so they chose to come back to God. Bad things on the surface happen, but we can't assign a why. That's the next point. We have to be very, very careful asking why. Elevating ourselves to ask the question why. I struggle with this one so much, especially when I was growing up. I always needed to know a why. Always needed to have a reason for whatever I was doing. And in our lives, sometimes we don't know the why. We don't need to know the why, and we don't get to know the why. Whether it's our parents telling us something, or our grandparents, or our boss at work, or God. Sometimes we don't get to know the why. We just have to do what we're told. Do what we're told because they have authority over us. When we're told to do something, do it. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. I will go do that because you told me to. If they tell you the why, great. But sometimes you don't have to know the why. We're supposed to do what we're told. We have to be careful when it comes to choosing who our loved ones are. How close we let those people be, how much we listen to them, all these different things. Spouse, friends, co-workers, some things we don't have choices about. We don't get to choose who our children will be. We can raise them the right way, but we don't get to choose how our children will turn out. We don't get to choose our co-workers all the time. Sometimes you do, but most of the time you have a job and you have your co-workers. You don't get to choose that. Hopefully, in this story of Job, if you know the story, we didn't go into it tonight, but Job's friends push him while he's down. While he's already down, all these other things are happening. Job's friends kind of kick him while he's down and push him down the wrong path. Hopefully our friends won't do that, but if we have the friends who treat us the right way, who help us look to God, help us to do things the right way, go back to God in everything we do. If we're making a wrong decision, call us out on it. If I'm going to say, I want to go do this thing. I want to do this thing. I want to make this decision. I want to get this. If I have the kind of friend that's going to call me out, what are you doing? That's not what God wants you to do. That's not what we're supposed to do. Why are you doing that? That's a friend. If we have the kind of friend that continues to help us push down the wrong path and make us make the wrong decisions against God, maybe that's not the person we need to have in our lives. It's one lesson that we can learn from Job is even though we love them, we care about them, and we really want them in our lives, we have to be very, very careful how much we listen to them. Always look back to God in everything we do. Do consequences always mean sin? Do bad things happening always mean sin is involved? Do good things happening always mean blessings are involved? We see a person like Jeff Bezos, right? Jeff Bezos owns Amazon. He just has crazy money everywhere. Owns a yacht, all these different things. We also see he's been divorced multiple times. He doesn't live his life the right way. And so even though he's making these terrible decisions, these wrong decisions, he has all of these material blessings. Some that, when we're good, hardworking Christians, we go to our job, we do what God tells us to do. Sometimes we lose our jobs. Sometimes these bad things happen to us. Does that always mean sin's involved? No. The good things always mean that you're living your life the right way? No. Even though bad things happen in life, we're looking at the stories of the kings, right, and divided kingdom in our classes. Do we always see that good things happen to good kings and bad things happen to bad kings? No. We see that the kingdom flourished for Israel under Jeroboam II, right? God was letting the kingdom grow and grow and grow, but Jeroboam II was making terrible decisions. He was not serving God. We see that example time and time again throughout the entire history of humans is even though sometimes we make bad decisions, good things happen to us. And sometimes good people are punished and we don't exactly know why. So we can't assign a reason. We can't see that, oh, hey, this terrible thing happened in their life. They must be living their life wrong. That's not up to us. We can't judge. We can't look at those kinds of things. The last point that I'm going to look at is tragedy, grief, how we handle these things. Normally, tragedy makes us think about the wrong things, makes us focus on the bad things in our lives. Job focused his on God. Job maintained his faith, looked to God. When bad things happen, we like to assign blame, right? I don't want to take the blame. I want to take the fall. It's not my fault that this terrible thing happened. It had to be somebody else's, right? I don't want to it's not my fault. I don't want to take the blame. So maybe we blame our parents. Maybe we blame our spouse. It's their fault. If the kid turned out to make their own decisions, go against God, maybe it's my spouse's fault. It can't be my fault, right? Maybe it's God's fault. These terrible things happen. I don't know what I did wrong. Maybe it's God's fault. No. Job's a great example that throughout the whole book, even though his life has been turned completely upside down, he's in a terrible place, we see that he always holds fast and does not sin against God. Shows us how we need to strive to live our lives. When these terrible things happen, look to God. Use Job as an example of how we need to live our lives. Really want to thank everybody for being here tonight. You heard the announcement that I was preaching tonight, and you still decided to show up, so I appreciate it. Thanks again to the elders for the chance to let me present a lesson from God's Word. Hopefully everybody took something from that lesson that we can apply in our lives. I like to preach sermons that maybe somebody can take something, help us to serve God to the best of our ability in everything we do. Last thought, and lesson's yours. Everyone's human. Everyone makes mistakes. Bad things happen. It's how we react to those things, how our attitude is. That's the kind of people we are. That's how we show who we are, where our heart lies, and if we can have a home in heaven with God. If we can have these bad things happen and we look to God, live our lives the right way, continue to serve Him, we can have a home in heaven with Him. If we have a terrible attitude and we go astray and we don't live our lives the right way, then hell is a real place, and we're going to end up there. Tonight, if there's anybody who needs any help in any way, whether it's prayers from the saints, whether it's you need to make your life right with God, whatever it is, then please come forward as we stand and as we sing.